Democrats have learned nothing from the 2024 election, and the way so many of them are trying to pencil in Gavin Newsom right now is perfect evidence of exactly that. I have one disclaimer before I get into the weeds here. If you the viewer, you the regular ass American living your regular ass American life the best way you can, identify as a liberal or a Democrat, I don't necessarily have smoke for you. The issues that I will express with the libs and the Dems in this video are not to be blamed on the people, but rather the Democratic politicians and the Democratic establishment. I'm a leftist. I'm a socialist, and I, for many, many years, identified myself as a liberal. Then I learned that there was an alternative to liberalism that actually aligned with my perspective and spoke directly to the real issues in America. I believe strongly that the billionaire pedophilic elite must be dismantled. I believe in universal health care. I believe that housing is a human right. I think all ethnicities, genders, and sexualities should get equal treatment because all people are just people. I would guess that your average liberal identifying citizen would agree with everything that I just said, or at least for the most part. And I think the only answer, the only path towards achieving those goals is socialism, or if that word is too scary for you, at the very least populism. Unfettered capitalism can no longer continue. However you want to describe it, the Democratic Party should put the working class at the center stage of its messaging. And if you're a liberal watching this, I hope I can convince you of that by the end of this video. I will also be referring to liberals and centrists much in the same way throughout this video. This is because liberal politicians and centrist politicians are mostly one and the same. Even if you, a lib, would not identify yourself as a centrist, this is true of the politicians, for the most part. The Democratic Party currently has a 33% approval rating in this country, which is worse than Donald Trump's approval rating. They cannot continue to go the way that they have been if they have any interest in winning and after that making real change. I'm going to start this off with a little history lesson. On June 28, 1919, German officials signed the Treaty of Versailles, basically a list of consequences that Germany had to face as a result of their actions in World War I. They were forced to take full responsibility for the war, pay massive reparations, upwards of $550 billion in today's money. As for the other countries in the Central Powers, well, their economy collapsed, so Germany had to pay for most of the structural damage caused by World War I. Meanwhile, Germany itself was left with little resources to adequately rebuild themselves. They were Europe's largest industrial power, so they didn't have nothing, but they didn't have the money for the Allied powers, let alone enough to re-establish Germany as a successful nation. Germany was immediately in a dire place and regularly edged on complete meltdown. They went back and forth between instability and recovery until the Great Depression, which was the straw that broke the camel's back, and each crisis strengthened political extremism. Not that the rest of the world was doing so much better, as the Great Depression was felt around the globe, but Germany got it the worst. These were dire times. The economy is collapsing, people are hungry, and there is civil unrest. Through this unrest, Germany finds itself with a cluster of different political parties, like the Communists, the Socialists, the German Democratic Party, the People's Party, and of course, the Nazis. And you can probably tell who's friends based on those names. To make it simpler, we got the leftists, the Democrats, and the extreme right. These guys changed up their names and coalitions a bunch in these times, so it does get a bit confusing, but to make it simple, that is essentially the sum of what happened. It was very frustrating researching this because the amount of changes and coalitions and all that, it's just kind of all over the place. I hate the two-party system, but the 18-party system is a little confusing. But the German Democratic Party was very center, with the People's Party still being more centrist but leaning conservative on that spectrum. These were the people that were in control for the majority of the years following World War I. But in 1933, after a series of electoral victories, the Nazis ended up winning this time. Hitler was appointed chancellor, but not by popular choice. In fact, the Nazis weren't even the most popular group for this particular election. The party had the majority, but it was not by any means some extreme majority. Many of these votes went to the left of the Nazis. More went to the left of the Nazis, but most of them went to the centrist parties as opposed to the leftist ones. And real quick, just to throw some criticism the way of the leftists, to show I'm not being completely biased here, the leftists have made plenty of mistakes throughout history as well. The communist and socialist parties combined did get more votes than the Nazis, but they hated each other over stupid bullshit and prevented a more unified front to resist the Nazis. So leftist infighting is also a very big problem, I think, in the discourse when we mostly agree on the same core principles. So this is dumb. Just for the record, they fucked up too. But guess what? The centrist parties who had more power collectively proved to be more worried about the possibility of socialism taking hold than they were with the Nazis taking hold. The centrists hated the socialists way more than they hated the Nazis. Anti-capitalists were more of a problem to the centrists than the fascists, because fascism and capitalism are like peanut butter and jelly. See, the centrists in Germany, from the more liberal to the more conservative, were largely pretty well off, all things considered, with the Great Depression and all. They were the petite bourgeois. They feared a socialist government could take them down a peg, potentially not let them be as rich as they really were. So instead, they joined sides with the Nazis and eventually elected themselves, gave the power over to Adolf fucking Hitler. The Adolf Hitler of being Adolf Hitler. Now, a few naive folk among you, this isn't an important part of the video, but while we're here, I will address this. A few naive people among you might be thinking, well, weren't the Nazis socialist? No. That's one of history's biggest lies. Hitler co-opted very loosely aspects of socialism in the hope of gaining the support of the working class, but he also immediately shut down every single union the moment that he took power. And key factor here, he sent all of the communists and all of the actual socialists to concentration camps. Hitler hated Marxism because Marx was Jewish, and he hated actual socialists because many of them were Jewish. Also, because they were internationalists while Hitler was a nationalist. He didn't want the world collectively working together. He wanted Germany dominating the world. He didn't believe that Marxism was socialism, which is really fucking dumb. Oh yeah, the father of socialism wasn't a socialist. Got it. Hitler was not a smart man, and his interpretation of socialism was entirely either misguided based on that stupidity or because he was trying to use it to manipulate people. His politics were informed by anti-intellectualism, which is usually the case of the extreme right, and in his case, it was because he thought too many academics were Jews. Hitler's socialism was an overt bastardization of the concept, and when you say the Nazis were actually socialist, that is you falling for Hitler's propaganda, so maybe rethink your life for a second there. And those on the actual left, before the election, mind you, were sending warnings of what was to come. They were telling the people that Hitler was not a real socialist, but it did not matter. They also tried to get the centrists on their side, but like I said, those centrists would rather elect Hitler than a socialist. The centrists were more aligned with a fascist than a true socialist. And thus concludes your history lesson. Anyways, fast forward to 2024, and we see that history has repeated itself in many respects. Joe Biden was a terrible fucking president, and it makes me sick that fools who cannot tell the difference between Democrats and leftists would ever think that I aligned with his Zionist geriatric ass. He was deeply unpopular from both flanks of America's two parties. The right hated him because he wasn't Trump, and much of the left did not like him because of his unconditional support of Israel. Things were already bad going into his campaign, and then Biden's dementia dial turned up, and they ran his corpse out there with puppet strings and a soundboard. It was fucking embarrassing. Immediately, but far more embarrassing was how long it took the Dems to realize that he should drop out. It took until he went into a debate and looked lost, like completely. And that was him on a good day. Literally everyone knew that this guy was basically 3 feet into the grave. People don't have 3 feet, but fuck it, that's funnier. And they just kept lying about it anyways. Eventually he did drop out, and rather than hold an election, you know, this whole democracy thing or whatever, you know, who cares about that? They instead insisted their candidate would be Kamala Harris, despite her previously established unpopularity, just because they already had some campaign funds that they could not use on anyone else. Fuck letting our voters actually have a choice in the matter. Kamala it is. And already, with her, we have an uphill battle. I want to acknowledge this because it's important. She's a woman. And, even worse, for getting voted in, she's a black woman. As a result, no matter what she does or says, she will be perceived as super left-leaning. That's just how it goes in a society that is deeply white supremacist and deeply misogynistic. That absolutely played a very large part in her loss, and I would even go as far as to say that if she was a white man instead, they would have won over Trump. For many Americans, black and woman was already 2 out of 3 strikes, and for even, maybe not more significant, but another very large portion, they only needed 1 strike before they were out. Black women have been basically at least one of the most progressive populations in America, so they, by default, for a lot of Americans, are seen as too far left or woke or DEI. But with that being the case, if no matter your move, you are going to be called a communist by MAGA, then the logical choice would be to actually be on the left, so the actual left wants to vote for you. Instead, Harris went hard in the paint at being the most centrist and even downright conservative candidate that she could possibly be. She went right on the border. No, actually, I'm the border czar. She literally argued that she was better on immigration because she deported more people than the Trump admin did. She said America needs a strong Republican Party. No, it doesn't. It doesn't need a Republican Party at all. Liberals have been saying this shit forever, like conservatives have not been the enemy of progress in this country since its inception. Pro-monarchy English settlers who opposed the American Revolution against the British were conservatives. Those who caused the Civil War, conservatives, those responsible for Jim Crow America, those responsible for the fight against and whitewashing of civil rights leaders, those responsible for the crack epidemic, those responsible for the AIDS crisis being ignored for years, conservatives, those who have expressed support for the eradication of trans people from society are conservatives. What have they done that's positive? We do not fucking need them. They are the enemy of progress, and they should be treated as such. The goal should be to dominate them politically and take every single Republican seat. And if that's not nice enough for you, that's how they're talking about the Democrats. So nut up. Don't just hold hands with them while you both collectively achieve nothing in a standstill. During a pivotal speech at the DNC, Harris said that we were going to have the most lethal military in history. Lethal. That is a very aggressive word choice. Not tough, not strong, certainly not virtuous or moral. Lethal. And she said that while at the same time, the administration that she was currently working under was supplying drones to Israel to kill tens of thousands and likely hundreds of thousands of children. She also told pro-Palestinian protesters to be quiet, I'm speaking, and then a bunch of online liberal wine moms started making like fucking fan cams out of it. Yes, Queen, she's speaking right now. You listen to her when she's talking #girlboss.
And everyone has a right to be heard, but right now I am speaking.
Don't interrupt her with your protests about child murder that she is endorsing. As of today, only 12% of Democratic voters support Israel. 12%. She stayed in line step with a fascist genocidal government because she had no interest in challenging the exact system that the Epstein files have begun to reveal. When 2020 Biden voters who didn't vote for Kamala were asked why, 29% of them cited her support of Israel as the problem. That was the largest given reason, with 24% saying the economy, which she also sucked on and had no real stance on. If we are to assume everyone who voted for Harris also voted for Biden, well, she got 7 million less voters than Biden did. If 29% of them decided to pass because of Gaza, that means that she left over 2 million votes on the table, which, for such a slim difference in the popular vote for how many close races there were in multiple states, that could have made the difference in this fraudulent electoral college system. Many on the left also did not appreciate her right-wing border stance. Not everyone supported Trump's perspective on immigration as much as people like to act like that's the case, and Harris decided to align herself with his views more than that of the left.
Kamala Harris supports increasing the number of Border Patrol agents.
As president, I will bring back the border security bill that Donald Trump killed, and I will sign it into law.
Leaving Americans who don't blindly hate foreigners to choose between two candidates who both had right-wing border policies. Their voices went unheard. That is more votes left on the table just to win 4 swing voters on the border issue. She even campaigned with Dick Cheney's wife. Dick fucking Cheney. She was also campaigning with Bill Clinton, if you want an idea of where her loyalties lie. Kamala, but also the Democratic establishment as a whole, are obsessed with bringing right-wing swing voters to their side, and it never works. And when it does work, they don't do anything while they're in office. People who are actual right-wingers and actual centrists will never vote for a woman they perceive as too far left, which again, they're going to have that perception regardless of what she says. If continuing to fund Israel, seeking mass deportations and border control, and capitalism continuing the way that it has been are your desires as a voter, then why the fuck would you vote for the woman who's just saying shit versus a man who you know is really about that hating on immigrants life? It's illogical. It was not just immoral for Harris to take these right-wing stances, it was also bad politics. And the question from there becomes, is this campaign approach a product of incompetence or is this malice? And I think the answer depends on the Democrat, at least for most issues. Harris aligned herself with the right as her campaign went along, which seemed to be a calculated effort, based not on morals, but what they thought would win over more voters. I don't think that Kamala was genuinely going to be all about that border life. I don't genuinely think her only convictions were supporting Israel and having the most lethal army ever. She said that shit to get votes or to avoid ruffling the feathers of the Democratic establishment, not because she believed it. But that approach was dumb. Having no conviction, having no spine, getting your talking points from fucking a PR board, that's not conviction, that's not belief, and it was clear as day because she's not even charismatic enough to pretend to believe shit she doesn't. All of this was a miscalculation. Instead of going left and getting truly embraced by the people who would actually vote for her, she tried to be the cool girl to all of the MAGA freaks, which alienated her from left-wing voters. And the Republicans subsequently rejected her anyways because of fucking course they would. Support of Israel is a fundamental pillar of the Democratic Party. They do not want to break from party lines. Harris standing against Israel would have been bold. It would have been deeply controversial within the Democratic establishment. It would have distanced herself from Biden, who he himself was a massive liability to her campaign. But instead, she took on this massive liability that began under Biden and let it sink her campaign, just because she didn't want to break away from party establishment. Emphasizing the importance of making the process of immigration to America much simpler and more accessible would have been bold. Going after the mega wealthy pedophilic ruling class would have been bold. But Democrats aren't bold. They are pussies. They refuse to stand up to Trump, and they carved the path for him to get here. The Democrats royally fucked up the 2024 election cycle and opened the doors for a fascist wannabe dictator. Luckily, the system of checks and balances in this country somewhat works, so he hasn't quite been able to be Hitler, but you can rest assured he would very much like to be. The Dems capitulated to him. They made it possible for a deeply unpopular candidate to win. Trump was not well liked either, but they managed to run people more unpopular than him. And this is exactly because of what Biden said when he won in 2020, where he perfectly summed up the ideology of Democrats. Nothing will change fundamentally during my administration. Nothing will fundamentally change with a country that was already in shambles by this point. That quote right there is why the Dems lost. That quote right there, the way that they approach politics as shown in that quote, is why the Democrats lost. It's why they will continue to lose if they do not change. In his first term, people got sick of Trump's bullshit. He didn't change much about how the country operated, and the stuff that he did change was for the worst. They went with a moderate Democrat in 2020, and that moderate Democrat changed nothing fundamentally. And those people who were hoping a centrist Dem would improve their material conditions realized that they had been duped, and then the pendulum swung right back to Trump. Democrats don't fight for the people. They sit on their thumbs all day while tweeting about how fucked up everything is when it's their job to fix things. Or to at least try. They don't get anything done, or at least they don't, until they encounter a socialist movement. Then they lock in. The Democratic establishment hates when a candidate like Zoran Mamdani comes out and decides to run on a socialist platform, one that aims to attract leftists, or more importantly, just downright people who are fed up with this system, which is most people, even if a majority would not identify as leftists. Many Americans do not have the proper language or understanding for what they actually believe and just see the Democrats as the furthest left option, so they say, I guess I'm a Democrat, until they see someone like Zoran or someone like Bernie who's actually proposing real change. Mamdani called out the capitalists, and Democrats don't like that because they are capitalists. It's just rainbow capitalism. Zoran called out politicians who don't do anything to bring positive change to their constituencies, and the Democrats did not like that because they don't benefit the working class, and they know it. The Democratic establishment did everything in their power to make sure that their sex pest grandma killer Andrew Cuomo would get the job instead, a man with 13 different accusations of sexual misconduct. Tens of millions of dollars were donated to his campaign from establishment Dems to stop a socialist from winning, including a nearly $10 million check from former Democratic New York Mayor Mike Bloomberg. They would rather back a deeply unpopular sex pest than a socialist, especially a brown one. Luckily, Zoran had such overwhelming support for a grassroots campaign that he won anyways, but the establishment Democrats did everything in their power to stop him, including being super racist. Just viciously, unapologetically racist in a way that was actually surprising to me, because the Democrats usually at least pretend to not be racist. Do they do anything for the races that they proclaim to be defenders of? No, but they at least usually don't just say overtly, clearly racist shit.
I'm a criminal. I'm a criminal. For Zoran! For Zoran Mamdani!
I didn't have a real job until I was 30, but sure, give me the keys to the city. What's the worst that can happen?
Paid for by Cuomo for NYC.
On top of that, Republicans, including Trump's admin officials, donated millions to his campaign as well. Trump shill Bill Ackman donated $1.75 million. Fox News co-founder Barry Diller, stupid fucking name, donated $500,000. Donald Trump even endorsed Andrew Cuomo. Liberals and Republicans, notorious for never working together, suddenly know how to get on the same page as soon as socialism makes any kind of progress as a movement in this country. What does that say to you about the Democratic establishment? How are you to interpret the Dems taking the same side as the Republicans other than making the clear connection that they both protect the same interests? When a Democratic socialist tries to run on a platform of actually helping workers, they shut that shit down as quickly as they can. Silly socialist. We don't do that around here. In 2020, when Bernie Sanders was once again gaining momentum to be president, Barack Obama called the other Democrats running for president and got them to all drop out of the race and rally behind Joe Biden. The liberals rejected a socialist in favor of a centrist, and that centrist paved the way for the takeover of a fascist. Are you seeing the parallels to my opening example? They are more interested in allowing a fucking fascist to take over than to do something that helps people. Do you understand? Centrist liberal politicians act as a yin to the Republicans' yang. They are not enemies, they are two sides of the same coin, and their inability to work together is really just a smokescreen because they don't want to work together about things that improve shit. They just want to have a constant back and forth culture war while the capitalists continue to take the money out from under our noses. Now, one of those sides is preferable to the other, but one side being better than the other is irrelevant when the reality is we need to stop flipping this fucking awful coin. This country, since Reagan, has gone back and forth between Democrat and Republican, and very little has materially improved. They allowed all of the evil shit that Reagan did to continue to succeed because they work for the same side. The side that wants to continue to suck the working class dry. The side that wants to continue imperialism and mass killings. This political cartoon is well known for a reason. Did you hear a woman is sending the bombs this time? It's true. The material conditions do not change, but the branding does. Democrats will wear a kente cloth one day and then vote to expand the police force the next. Liberals are all about aesthetics. They are all about social issues, which are important, but they permeate from the issues of class. Many people who are super racist, super misogynistic, super homophobic, transphobic, all of the different phobics and ists, it's because it is misplaced anger for how bad their conditions are because of this capitalist system. The Democrats care about appearing to be on the right side of history while being puppets for the bad side themselves. But they refuse to acknowledge the root of these issues because no matter what, they cannot question capitalism. If they do, they will stop lining their own pockets. Everything that is wrong with this country, everything, is because of the ruling Epstein class. Full stop. They are the problem. One side wants to maintain this unjust class system, but gay people are allowed to get married, while one side wants to maintain this unjust system and they want to eradicate gay people. Now, if you present me with these two options, as a bisexual man, yeah, give me the capitalist overlords who at least allow femboys to exist. But these do not have to be the only two options, and being better than the other side should not be seen as any kind of big deal. 100% Hitler versus 99% Hitler does not work. Why are you continuing to try to put 99% Hitler on the stands? Oh, the Democrats are better than the Republicans? Gavin Newsom, Joe Biden, and Kamala Harris are better than Donald Trump? No fucking shit. Anyone who would deny that is deluding themselves, or they're on a side that you were never going to win over anyways. However, being better than wannabe Hitler should not be the bar. Lesser of two evil politics does not work. Germany voted for primarily centrists or non-extremist conservatives, and then Hitler became chancellor by the hands of those centrist parties immediately. The Democrats should maybe, just maybe, try electing a Zoran-style candidate and backing that candidate from the establishment instead of 99% Hitler. Nothing would have fundamentally changed for the better on a mass scale under Kamala Harris's hypothetical administration. Things certainly would not have gone to shit as fast as they did, but things wouldn't have gotten substantially better, and it would have left the door open for some fascists to win in 2032, just as that same door was left open by Joe Biden. Running a centrist like Gavin Newsom, who opposes a billionaire tax, rated homeless encampments as a PR stunt while doing nothing policy-wise to end homelessness, enacted Ronald Reagan Day and fucking Black History Month, the man responsible for the crack epidemic, this is going to result either in a loss or a delayed loss. The Dems may win, but no matter what, the people will lose. And after recording this, Gavin repeated the myth that the Dems are losing popularity because of pronouns.
No doubt that the Democratic Party needs to be, dare I say, more culturally normal, less prone to spending disproportionate amount of time on pronouns, identity, politics.
Kamala talked about the trans issue as minimally as possible during her campaign, and she was a fence sitter on that issue every time it did come up. Once again, an instance where she went centrist and alienated both sides of the aisle. I have no doubt that Gavin would be a better president than Trump. Again, who gives a shit? That's such a low bar. Gavin knows how to put together a sentence and pay attention to things without needing to be praised every few words in order to keep him invested. But I also have no doubt that the right won't be losing much sleep if he wins. The road to bounce back to power will remain open because Newsom will ensure that that road is not shut down. Because the Dems, the centrists, even the liberals will fail to improve people's lives in a substantial way as they did in 1933 and 2024. The people will look to a fascist for answers because a fascist will at least proclaim to be a break from the established system. Many Democrats, many Bernie supporters in 2016 decided that they were going to vote for Donald Trump instead after he was kicked out because they wanted something anti-establishment. Do I think that is a very silly leap in logic? Absolutely. But for all of his long list of faults, Donald Trump, at least on the surface, he didn't actually mean any of it, but he spoke to people's issues. He spoke to their righteous anger, but he was a damn fraud. And for me, there is not a single thought that is more devastating to me right now than the idea that all of the shitstorm that came with Trump's presidencies will not be followed by a massive change, but a return to a deeply unsatisfying and unjust status quo. But at least you won't have to hear Donald Trump's annoying voice anymore. Something bigger needs to come of this than just pausing progress indefinitely. There are some politicians in the Democratic Party who do not walk in line step with the party establishment. Some of them have a semblance of some balls. Those politicians, if they want to win, should embrace socialism. They should embrace populism and actually seek to address the problems in this country for working class Americans. The US has never been more primed for socialism to take hold electorally. The US has never had more citizens upset with the capitalist system. The propaganda is fading as people's conditions get worse. They are fed up, and for the first time in American history, they are beginning to wake up to the fact that it has been capitalist vultures keeping them down this whole time. 53% of Americans believe that billionaires are a threat to democracy. Over 70% of Americans believe in a higher wealth tax. And 94% of Americans are not satisfied with the Epstein investigation. The last time the American worker was being squeezed more was the Industrial Revolution. Every day, it becomes more and more expensive to have your basic needs met, and the most elite, powerful people on the planet are being exposed as sick fucking monsters. I already knew there were, but even people who've been trying to keep their head in the sand are starting to notice. Donald Trump and the Republicans have never been more unpopular, but at the same time, that can be said for the Democrats, who, as I mentioned in the intro, have a lower approval rating than Trump right now. You cannot lose this hard and not take that information as a lesson to readjust your approach. Liberals, both the politicians and the ones that I've been seeing on Twitter, have not earned their smug attitude towards leftists. Their policy approach provably does not appeal to the American people. It is bad politics. You do not get to be an elitist about how moral and correct your side is when people find your party more detestable than that of the pedophile in chief. A socialist is now mayor of the largest city on earth. Same goes for Seattle, whose new mayor Katie Wilson is a socialist. AOC, Bernie, and Rashida Tlaib are all in Congress. Many different cities have socialists in smaller local governance. Anila Maya just won the Democratic Party for the congressional race in New Jersey, one she will likely win against her Republican opponent. It's not about being better than the Republicans. That should be the bare minimum. I am tired of people expecting so little of their public officials that not being Trump is enough reason to feverishly support a candidate. If the Democrats want to win, they have to propose and eventually enact real change that gives the power to the people. That will only be achieved by combating the elite who run this country behind closed doors. America knows that billionaires are the problem at this point, more so than they ever have. And anyone who is not playing on that knowledge, anyone who is not playing on their righteous anger, is either capitulating for the interests of the ruling class, or they're just a terrible politician. It's both bad morals and bad politics. Gavin Newsom might win in 2028. I have no doubt that he could defeat J.D. Vance. No one likes the couch fucking Peter Thiel gimp. But the people will not meaningfully win in this country unless someone who is willing to challenge the ruling class rather than work for them steps up. Luckily, the DNC cannot outright eliminate the primary this time, or at least I don't think they can. So Newsom doesn't just get the spot by default, although the power of the DNC backing him has a lot of sway. There will be a strong push for him from the establishment. Do not let it fool you. This man has no interest in changing your material conditions. He did a PR stunt where he raided homeless encampments and voted and is pushing against a bill for a billionaire's tax in California right now. Gavin is a diversion from what will actually enact change in this country. And me feeling that way does not mean that I would rather see Trump or Vance win. It doesn't even make sense to believe that. It does not mean that I don't actually care about the issues of minorities. I actually care enough to want long-term change. The Republicans, to me, are an obvious force for bad. I often spend more time criticizing libs because the issues with Republicans are as clear as day. I don't think pointing out that fascism is bad is breaking any new ground. But make no mistake, this administration and the pedophiles that it is protecting are an existential threat to America. That threat is very real, and beating that threat is very important. Let me get one more metaphor in here and I'll wrap this up. Let's say the Republicans are Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and the Democrats need to beat The Rock in a boxing match. Would you rather the representative for the Dems be a prime Muhammad Ali or Joe Biden? It is not pro-Trump or both sidesism to suggest that maybe we should aim for an Ali type rather than a Biden type. A feeble old man and two centrists who refuse to stand up for anything will not win that fight, and if they do, it won't be a real win for the people. We should be aiming to elect a leader who will adequately defend us from Trump and Vance. Why do you not want a strong defender? Not just a not as bad alternative to them, real change that will not allow for the pendulum to swing right back to fascism. I am praying that there ends up being a strong Democratic Socialist candidate. I genuinely think that they would have a real shot of winning. Or maybe that's just cope, and the only way is violent revolution. But I personally don't care for that route. The capitalists have drones. I don't know if you knew that, but I'm really not trying to go up against drones. So yeah, don't just vote blue no matter who. Vote for someone who will actually stand up to the billionaire class, not these fucking spineless liberals. Ooh, man, I've wanted to talk about this just directly forever now. God damn do I hate the libs. God damn do I hate the Democrats. Because I want people who will actually stand up for my trans siblings and care about their interests. I want people who will actually make life easier for the bottom 60% of this country that is living paycheck to paycheck. And that it's insane to me that wanting more results in being accused of wanting Donald Trump. It's stupid as fuck. I'm not going to be scripting videos on this channel every time. I do want to do it just because I enjoy it, but I had to make sure that this one was basically more or less my manifesto on the problem with the Democratic establishment. But yeah, that's it. Goodbye.